So we are continuing this conversation about self-consciousness yet again. And now we are going to talk about appreciation, acknowledging another human being. So take a little moment to remember something. Let's just try and remember which is your favorite subject in your school. What was the subject that you really were fond of, that you did really well at? Try to remember, put it in your mind. And now try to remember, what was the teacher of that subject like towards you? Do you remember who the teacher was? Do you remember how that teacher was when they were talking to you? How they were paying attention to you? What they were saying to you? How they were encouraging you? See, I've had this conversation with a lot of people during my coaching sessions. And every time I've asked, people have spoken about, say, for example, mathematics, or they've spoken about literature, English, or they've spoken about another subject altogether. But then when they've thought about the teacher, there's always a certain fondness with which they remember that teacher. And they remember that teacher was kind of encouraging to them. I remember my favorite subject used to be physics. And the teacher physics teacher was particularly encouraging to me. First time ever in my life, there was a teacher who, in say maybe 6th or 7th grade, she was surprised when I didn't get the top marks. She said, "Amit, why didn't you get the highest marks? What's wrong? This time what happened?" And I was not in the business of getting high marks at all. Particularly not in my eyes. If I ever scored well, it was more out of fluke rather than because I've worked hard or it's been a pattern. But now I saw myself differently because she saw me differently. So acknowledgement and appreciation does that to you. When you appreciate another human being, you build the other human being. You construct another human being. You create those qualities that you're appreciating in another human being. I was not good in physics before I was appreciated. Perhaps you were not great at that subject that you became great at because that teacher perhaps encouraged you, acknowledged you, or expected you to do well. So there's this effect called the Pygmalion effect. It essentially says that when you expect a certain member of your team or a student of your class, or perhaps one of your children to do well in a certain area, somehow your expectation, your anticipation, it makes a huge difference, and somehow they start performing better. That's the effect. And there is also the opposite of that effect. It's called the golem effect. And that effect is that if you expect your subordinates or your students or your own children to do worse, or you're afraid that they may do worse, then their performance will drop to match your expectation out of them. So somehow what you are already believing will come true. That's the idea of the Pygmalion effect. And you also have seen it work in your life pertaining to this particular subject that we were talking about. Just because your teacher expected you to do well, anticipated you to do well, just like my physics teacher, you start rising in your performance, you start doing better. For some strange reason, we want to do better in the eyes of the person who's already having good expectation from us. Even if this is not spoken of explicitly, it makes a huge difference. And now when it is spoken of, that means if the person is actually encouraging you, appreciating you, acknowledging you, this act is not an act of appreciating the quality which is already there. Like, for example, physics was not super for me. I was not always great at physics. And we look at your own subject, perhaps the subject at which you started doing well. There was a time when you didn't know that you are really great at it. Perhaps before this teacher came along and appreciated you, or acknowledged you, encouraged you. So appreciation, acknowledgement is an act of construction. It's an act of creation. When you acknowledge a subordinate in some area, you begin to build their strength in that area. They want to rise to match your expectation. So where is it that we should acknowledge? The idea to acknowledge is in the area where the other person wants to do better. Let's pause and set aside that for a moment. appreciating others doesn't come that naturally to us. Criticisms are easy to come by. For example, if at home there was dal today, if the salt is less, we'll promptly mention it. But if the dal is just right, then it's another challenge. It doesn't just come out like that. That okay, every time we will acknowledge wholeheartedly. It doesn't always happen. Appreciation, acknowledgement is not something that flows spontaneously all the time. You see, imagine this. Okay, let's turn this around and let's get into insight on why do we not like to acknowledge people freely. Imagine if you were being acknowledged by somebody wholeheartedly. Imagine that I'm talking to you right now in first person and I'm saying you are an awesome human being. I really love this and this about you. I love that you've helped this person, or I love that you have actually made this task appear so easy, and I think you are really awesome in this aspect of your personality is really fantastic. Now, if I acknowledge you like that, what are the thoughts that are coming up within you? Is it easy for you to take in whatever I'm saying at the face value? Normally it is not. When people acknowledge us, what are the kind of thoughts that we have in response to those kinds of acknowledgements? We have thoughts like, what do you want from me? Or why are you saying that? Or come on, let's move to the next topic. Or maybe you're looking for an appreciation. So let me say that to you. You too. Because we have a judgment against the very act of appreciation. We have judgment that it looks far too much like flattery. And when other people are acknowledging you, you don't want to accept it. You question it. Deserving appreciation? Me? Who me? Deserving any appreciation? How can that be? No, this is not fair, is it? You do deserve appreciation. And it could be that the other person finds something special about you, is inspired by something. So why are you not able to let that sink in? Why must you speak up in response to appreciation so quickly? Why must you say something or another in response? No, or you too, or what do you want? Why can't you just let that appreciation, that acknowledgement go to your own heart, be felt, sink, allow that to sink in. If you let it sink in, if you believe for a moment that what the person is saying is coming from their own heart, then it will construct you, it will build you, it will create that strength in you. You will perhaps start believing in yourself that you've got that quality already. And if you are able to let in appreciation, if you are able to allow appreciation to get to your own self, only then you'll be able to give away appreciation. Otherwise, you will have a judgment against the act of appreciation, so you'll not be able to give it away freely. You'll keep thinking, this looks far too much like flattery. Let me not say that. But if you're able to let it in, if you're able to have faith in the good results that appreciation, acknowledgement creates, in generosity of the other person in appreciating you, connecting with you, then you might be willing to do that. You see, appreciation is just an act of generosity. My teacher was just generous for no reason for me. Your teacher was generous for no reason. They didn't have to tell us that we were good at physics or you at another subject. They were just generous for no reason. And of course, we were not good at that subject as if every day. We did once something good, and now they already were saying you are really good at it. And as if they were willing to bring generosity to you. They were willing to bring generosity to me. And that's what appreciation is about, what acknowledgement is about. If we are trying to overcome self-consciousness, one way to overcome self-consciousness is notice that others are self-conscious too, and how much appreciation their heart is looking for. And it's not easy for their heart to let in the appreciation, so you will have to work double time at doing it in a fashion in which it reaches them, because they're not going to trust you. They don't trust themselves to be deserving in appreciation. So you'll have to be convincing. You'll have to feel it. You'll have to come from conviction. knowing fully well that the person may not be already good at physics. You're actually making the person good at physics in the future. So you'll have to bring it up and do it in a fashion in which the person begins to feel and have faith in themselves, even though there is some but little evidence yet. So Amit is good at physics, but not yet in a fashion which she was willing to acknowledge me. So she said, "Why aren't you getting top marks? You ought to be getting top marks like always." And that wasn't always true. But you see, it made a huge difference to me. So when you acknowledge another human being like that, you are actually building their self-confidence up. When the game that you're playing in social settings switches to building other people's self-confidence, then you're no longer concerned about this guy. That's one way in which your self-consciousness will completely dissolve. So start paying attention to others' need for appreciation. Look into their hearts. Pay attention to them. Pay attention to that need. Meet that need. Bring confidence, faith, and some appreciation to them. Do it in a fashion in which it is completely for no reason, just out of generosity. Don't expect them to say thanks to you. Just for no reason at all. Just because you're generous. When you're willing to play that game out of generosity, your own view of yourself will begin to shift. You begin to view yourself as someone good, someone who is playing the game of goodness in life. And your self-confidence, your belief will grow, your ease will grow. And your conversations will become easier because people would like to converge towards you. Because that in your aura, they flower, they flourish, they bloom. In your presence, their confidence grows. So they would like to draw towards you. And you would find their faith in you boosts your confidence. It makes you more assured, self-assured, more easeful, more self-expressed. And when you are willing to appreciate another human being, they are also willing to hear small points of improvement. But notice this, that these two ideas should never come together. You see how we acknowledge another human being is often like this, that you're really good at this, except this one or two small qualities. Oh, you are really good at this. You did this really well, but except that small thing. But otherwise you are great. We don't have to do it like this sandwich. We do not have to bring in this one negative quality in the same conversation when we are appreciating someone. Set that for another conversation. But when you are a generous human being, when you acknowledge people abundantly, then they'll also come to you looking for ideas that they can improve upon. And not in the same conversation as acknowledgement, but in separate conversation. You can talk about, okay, how would you like to work on this? This is one area where I really believe both of us can work. So if you could perhaps touch hearts through appreciation, they would also be willing to receive suggestions of improvement. The converse just doesn't work if we are forever critical of, say, like we are for our little children. Can you do this better? Have you tried this? Have you done this homework? This is something that is always present for me. Even when my children are all grown up, it's easier for us to remind them of what they've not done than acknowledge what they have done. Now, if we are such parents, or if we were having somebody in our life who's always critical of us, then is it easy for us to stay open to listen to them? Okay, this guy is every time he passes by, he's going to mention a few things that I haven't done. Then if I see the person coming my way, I'll already close myself. Now, that doesn't work. Our criticism closes people. They are no longer willing to pay attention to us. They withdraw away from us. So the only way we have to influence people, to impact people, to assert change upon people is through appreciation, acknowledgement. And that's not an act of fixing, changing them. It's just as an act of generosity, an act of love, and your hugeness. It's because you acknowledge people because you are generous. You are that kind of person who, every time that you passes by them, impact them in a fashion that my physics teacher impacted me. Try that out. It's one way. and a very powerful way to overcome self consciousness.